Alright, you guys, so my guest today goes by the name of Bryan Ward. He's a U.S. Marine vet, he's a championship basketball coach, and he's the host of Dad Up podcast. It was a great conversation, and it was a great pleasure to have him on the show. Here's Bryan Ward.
Yeah, how you doing? Thank you very much for having me. I was excited, looking forward to this, so I appreciate you having me on. I spent a few years in the Marines. I'm a dad of two now grown boys. They're both men now, 22 and 19. My wife and I have been married for 24 years. In a few weeks. Anniversary's coming up. So,
Very nice.
Thank you. I've been recording this podcast for dads. It's where I interview very successful, either, celebrities, professional athletes, business owners, entrepreneurs, things like that, on their experiences being a father, in hopes that it kind of inspires dads out there to really be the best that they can be for their families. It's super important to me as a father to be the best that I can be for my boys as they grew up. I was very involved in their lives, so it's why I really started it, because my boys are kind of grown now. I kind of shifted from being the all-in dad to now kind of watching them kind of go off on their own. So the podcast is really just to kind of continue my journey as a father and inspiring other dads to be the best at that.
Absolutely. I mean, you worked towards that craft of raising successful, strong men, and here you are putting that out for new fathers who could definitely use that information, because you don't really get equipped with a set of rules on how to succeed, and you sort of, there's information out there, but it's good when you can hear real people with real experiences offer that value and information that they need to hear.
Just kind of being the I guess classified as the babysitter, and a lot of dads carry this weight on their shoulders. I talk about this a lot in my show, but a lot of dads carry this weight on their shoulder of, I've got to be the financial provider for my family, so I've got to work these 80-hour weeks. I can't be involved in what the family's doing because I've got to provide financially for the family, and that's not necessarily the case. My goal in the show is really to show other dads out there that, hey, you can have a successful career and still be a successful father. And I've managed to do it, and my guests that I interview have managed to do it. So that's really the goal of it, is just to show them, hey, yes, you can be the financial provider, but also be the all-in dad that you want to be.
Very nice. Just providing them. How are you, for a lot of dads, it's different out there, but for a lot of dads, they say, I know that, man, but it's, we got to keep moving and it's hard to make that time. How do you say, let's say to a friend or another dad who's like, it's hard for me to build that time for the family because I keep looking at the long-term returns on putting in all of these hours with work, that we can, never-ending hours, right, that you can put in the office?
It's one that I'm asked a lot, and to be honest, it really comes down to your schedule. I talk about this a lot on my show. Scheduling is so important. We schedule all kinds of things in our lives, whether it's, our fitness, right? Working out. We schedule, going to church. We schedule going to doctor's appointments. We schedule podcasts like these, right? But you should schedule time with your family as well. If the family schedule is not on your calendar, it just won't happen. You just have so many interruptions throughout the day and the week that the family kind of gets put on the back burner, and they should really be the priority. So I have scheduled on my schedule, I have all my family time on my schedule, and it's a non-negotiable for me. It's non-negotiable. So when it comes down to it, what I tell dads is you need to make sure you're putting time for your family on your schedule, just like you do every.
Absolutely. And no schedule is tailor made, meaning it's not a cookie cutter approach for anybody. Everybody's got a different schedule, but it's about what the priorities are and what's important.
It can be tough, and obviously our schedules, they can change as the day goes on. We have things that come up. I understand all that. But one of the things that was super important to me as a dad, I've coached just about every single one of the teams that my sons played in. They played flag football, they played soccer, they played baseball, they played basketball, all the way up through high school. And I made the time to be involved and coach. And as far as my job goes, I have a daytime job. It was a non-negotiable for me. If I had a job that wasn't going to allow me to be that, all-in dad, I would have found a different job. I would have found a different career path, because that's how important it was to me.
Now, was this something that you always had instilled in you? Was it something you saw in friends that had absent fathers who had these issues that were sort of at the front line that you could noticeably see compared to, your friends with fathers? Where did you get to this point where you said, I'm not going to negotiate with the work. I'm going to be there for my kids, and it's not negotiable?
From personal experience, my parents, they were, I have a sister, and they were involved in what we did as far as, raising us. But as far as being active in the things that we did, I played a lot of sports and throughout my, years growing up and even in high school. And I can count on one hand how many sporting, games and events that they actually came to. So it's a personal, it hit me personally as a kid, being that kid out on the court or being that kid out on the field and looking up in the stands and not seeing my parents there, because they had to work. They had these jobs that required them, they had to work, so they couldn't be there. And I understand that, and I don't hold grudges against them because of that. But at the same time, I knew that I wasn't going to be that way when I had kids. And so when my boys were born, it was just something that was instilled in me.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, with the times, more opportunities to make a surviving, a living, doing, comparatively speaking, back then it was much harder to make money, and you had to do what you had to do. And now there's more options, and it's great to see, because these are the things that are important. You want to provide opportunity for fathers to be there for the kids, not only expect maybe mom to be home all the time. The world's changed in many ways, in many positive ways, but at the end of the day, we need both figures. We need a strong father to go ahead and, knock some sense into the boys when they're acting up, and go ahead and be there for moments when you want to see pops out there and being there for them. We need a leader figure, and that figure is, and it starts with your father always. And sometimes kids find it in other people because they don't have that, but you always want it to come from your dad.
And you bring up a good point. My boys obviously are out of high school now. My older son just graduated from college last December, and my younger son's he actually plays college basketball in college. So my boys are out of high school, but I still coach at the high school level, and I do it because I want to be that role model for them, because I have a lot of players that have the similar situations that I had as a child growing up in high school. They have parents that aren't able to come to their games. They have parents that aren't involved in what they're doing with their athletics. So that's the reason why I still coach. I want to be that influence for them. I want to be that positive role model for them. And I love it that much. So I still do it.
Very nice, Bryan. It's something that you want to continue to do and keep that going. I have a lot of respect for that. That's very awesome. What is the name of your podcast, Bryan?
Dad Up podcast. And I kind of took the name from, the term man up. So that's where I got it. It was, I had a list of names to go by, and I actually ran them by my wife and my kids, my two boys, and they liked Dad Up the best. So that's the name of it. Dad Up podcast.
Very nice, very nice. Now let's talk a little bit more. Let's talk a little bit more, Brian. So let's talk about dads and but that off time when they're hanging out with the guys. Let's talk about when you see other fathers and they're not performing as well as you might want them to, right? And naturally, we want our friends. I think just naturally we want the best for them and them to be performing the best. How do you maintain that friendship while also not wanting to butt into how one raises their children, right? That's such a sensitive topic. But at the same time, you want us all to, how do you go about these things?
Well, I think, gosh, that's a good question, because I understand it's challenging and I understand it can be tough, but I think, for me, like I said before, it was just one of those things that was a non-negotiable. I wasn't willing to budge. And when I see other dads that aren't as involved, there's only so much I can do. I can provide influence, I can provide guidance to them, but it's their family, it's their life. They're gonna choose the direction they want to go. But I just see that being actively involved in our kids' lives is so important, especially when they're younger, because I see a lot of dads that have these careers and they want to build this legacy outside the home. And I say your legacy is actually built inside your home. The legacy starts inside the home and works its way out from there. And a lot of these guys, I tell them, look, these times when your kids are little is so precious. And that's the time that you build that bond, because when they're teenagers, they don't want to hang out with mom and dad. They want to hang out with their friends. They want to start to build that independence, right? So I tell them, look, these times are precious to build that bond. So that way, when they go through those teenage years and they don't want to hang out with you, when they start to become older, like these, 18, 19, 20-year-old kids, if you've had that bond built with them, they'll come back to you and they'll be I call my boys two of my best friends. My two boys are two of my best friends because I've built that bond with them as younger kids. And when they were teenagers, they didn't want to hang out with me. We still did stuff together as a family, but they didn't want to hang out with me all the time. But because I built that bond with them when they were younger, that bond was so strong that now that they're older, they're adults now, they're two of my best friends. So I think it's important when I tell dads to say, look, this is the time that you really, really need to focus on your kids and build the bond that will last through their teenage years and into their adult lives.
Very inspirational, Brian. Very inspirational. And as you're saying that, I'm also thinking, maybe you should start a marriage podcast, because I remember you saying you've also been married now for 26 years, is it?
24 years in a couple weeks. We'll actually be celebrating our anniversary. We're taking the boys to Hawaii in a couple weeks, so we're going to be celebrating our anniversary in Hawaii along with Father's Day. It's interesting that you say that. My wife and I actually see a marriage coach every single month. And we see this marriage coach not because we have problems. We don't have problems. And we see the marriage coach to kind of keep us in check, to keep us aligned with each other. So it's the reason why we see the marriage coach, is just to kind of keep us in check with each other, keep our marriage strong. And listen, we all have, professional athletes have coaches, right? You go to the gym, you want to work out with a trainer, you have a coach that's your trainer. My players on my basketball team, they have a coach. I'm their coach, right? So why not have a coach in marriage? And
absolutely.
Yeah, my wife and I see a marriage coach once a month, and it's really been beneficial for us.
So you vouch for the marriage coach. Now, what advice do you have for married couples who are seeking a marriage coach? What does that relationship need to look like? Did you have to see a couple before you settled on one? What does that look like? Sometimes one favors one over the other. Do both need to like this marriage coach? Because at the end of the day, it's another bond, another relationship that is coming into one of the most important relationships, if not the, in your life.
Yeah, our marriage coach is she's a licensed therapist. So she's a therapist for families and for couples that are struggling, and that was important. We wanted to have somebody that was actually trained and had a lot of experience. We also, what was important to us is we wanted to have somebody that was deep in their faith. So we wanted to have a faith-based coach as well. So those kind of criteria is what we looked at. It didn't matter if they were man or woman. Our marriage coach is a woman. I guess it's personal preference really for you, for whoever's listening to this, for you and your spouse. It's a personal preference. But yeah, I would highly recommend that you meet with a couple of them and determine which one is the best. For us, when we first met this marriage coach, she ended up being, we weren't sure at the first couple meetings, but she ended up being really great. And we've seen her for many years, and she's worked out. She's awesome.
Very nice, very nice. And obviously this is something that every married couple should, if not consider, try out. You are 24 years strong, and that's not a lot of, I don't know the statistics, but you don't see that often. And just talking with you, I see that there's a lot of positivity in you, and it seems like you really, I have a lot of respect for that. And the same for your podcast for it, advising other dads. A lot of dads need to hear this stuff, whether it's with marriage or with raising your kids. Be the leader and lead by example, and moving forward, things will return to you in tenfold.
Yeah. Look, I'm not perfect. I make mistakes every single day as a dad. Even now, I make mistakes. As a matter of fact, earlier today, I had an interaction with my younger son, who's 19, and it wasn't the best interaction between the two of us. He was not in the best of spirits, and the reaction the response that he gave me and my wife, was not the best. And I responded in a way that wasn't best. I mean, it wasn't great. And so I had to check myself. I responded, and then I quickly fixed it because I realized what I had just done. I didn't do anything bad. I kind of responded abruptly. So look, we're all human. We all make mistakes. But what I try to do is I try to acknowledge it. It's okay to apologize as a father. It's okay to make mistakes as a parent. Our kids make mistakes. We make mistakes. We're completely normal to make those, have those errors or those issues. But what you need to recognize is put your ego aside, check yourself, and acknowledge when you've made the mistake. Like I did with my son. I acknowledged. I said, "Hey, I didn't mean to come off that way. I love you, bud. Have a good night." He was off to his job, and I said, "Hey, I love you, bud. Have a good night. Enjoy your night." So, it's all good. It's all good.
Setting that pride aside is a really big factor with but that's back to just leadership examples and being someone to look up to. You have to be able to set your pride aside and own up to when you feel like you didn't perform in how you may have wanted to, because there's a lot of strength in that as well, in showing that vulnerability, especially as a father. Your kids see that, and obviously they're going to do the same when they grow up, and so you having that vulnerability is insanely impactful for them. Very, very nice.
Yeah, it's it's ever evolving. You're constantly. I always strive every single day to be the best version of myself, and each day I want to be a little bit better than I was the day before. And so you constantly have to work at it. And if it's important to you, it's important to me. So because it's important to me, I work at it. Now, look, I wasn't always this way. I'm an ex-Marine. I had. When my boys were younger, I had a temper. They probably say I still have a temper. I don't know, but it's just one of those things I have to work on constantly, and I'm okay at it. I'm okay at making the mistakes. I'm okay at it because I know that I'll acknowledge the mistakes I make and try to work on fixing it the next time.
Absolutely. We're all just human, and we're ever evolving, always building ourselves. Let me ask you this, Bryan. How about, you have two boys who are now grown up, right? 19 and 22. You maintain that relationship, and like you said, from the beginning, you nurtured it, and you properly, managed that relationship with the love and care that you provided. And moving forward, they're there and they come back to visit the dad because that's what they want to do. At that age, it's a difficult age, right? 19 to 22. We remember that. I remember that. You have a lot in you, a lot of energy, more energy than you can ever conceive of, right? You might not even know how much energy and power and just everything. But you also have a lot of this might be the right word, but it might be the wrong one. A lot of envy, right, for your fatherly figures. How do you manage that when you start to butt heads with your kids? And there's that old saying, right? Your kids want to kill their heroes, right? They want to take them out, but at the same time, you need to maintain that respect for this entire operation.
Yeah, it's like I said before, it's something that you constantly have to work at. But my boys are strong-willed. They're very independent. They have a lot of drive, a lot of passion in them. They have things that they want to do, goals that they want to achieve. And all I can do as a dad now, because they can efficiently go off on their own if they want to. As a matter of fact, my older son is in Arizona right now looking at some apartments with some buddies. He wants to move out by this summer. He wants to move out of the house, and so he's looking to move into an apartment in Arizona. And I want them to, I guess you could say, flap their wings. I want them to go. I want them to learn how to just be independent on their, just kind of go out on their own. And all I can do as a dad now is just provide them guidance. If they choose not to take my advice, that's okay. But just be willing. I tell them, look, you don't have to take my advice. If you do, great. If you don't, that's okay too. I'll still have your back 100%. If you go out and you don't take my advice and it doesn't work out and things don't go the way that you wanted them to, or you make mistakes, I will still have your back. Just because you didn't take my advice doesn't mean I'm going to shut the door on you. I will still 100% have your back. So take my advice or not, it's okay. And that's all I can do now as a father, because like I said, they're adults now. They're able to thrive on their own. They both have jobs. They both make decent money. And that's all I can do is just be that guide for them if they choose.
Absolutely, and that's something you have. It's a system that you have figured out, and it clearly works. And this is why you continue to put that value out to back to the podcast fathers who are teaching growing boys, because you have to instill this from the beginning, so that when they're 19, they're looking at apartments, living their lives and spreading their wings, versus living in the basement playing the video games maybe for another 10 years. You know what I mean? That's what you don't want.
Right. Yeah, no, it's my boys still play the video games every once in a while. They're not super active on it. They're more about how much money can I make? What can I do next? My younger son, he has, even though he plays, he's in college and he played basketball in college, he still has 2 jobs. He still works 2 jobs. My older son has a full-time job he makes really good money at, but he still has another part-time job on top of it. They're all about trying to make as much money as they can and saving money, which is great. I try to encourage them to have a bit of a social life. I'd like them to have a little bit more of a social life, but look, they're going to make the decisions based on what's best for them. And all I can do is just be there to support them, whether they make good decisions or bad decisions, just support them as best as my wife and I do the same. We support them as much as we can.
Absolutely. And just let them know, if they lay with dogs, they're going to wake up with fleas. Bryan, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today, Bryan. I really appreciate it. How can our audience find you on social media?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I was super excited when you reached out, and they can find me on my website at daduptribe.com. So it's daduptribe.com. And then I'm active on all social media platforms. I have Facebook, I have LinkedIn, I have Twitter, I have TikTok. But I'm the most active on Instagram at daduppodcast. That's my Instagram handle.
Very nice. All right, Bryan Ward, you guys, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for being on the show, Bryan.
Thank you very much for having me, brother. I appreciate it.